Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
Hello and welcome back to the World Wanderers podcast. After we've been doing a couple interviews and destination episodes, we're back kind of in almost real time. We're recording this episode on a Tuesday. It'll be coming out on the following Thursday, so you'll probably be listening to it around the time we've recorded. And we just wanted to take an episode to talk about kind of what was going on in the world, what was going on in our lives, things that have changed for us given the kind of surrounding circumstances. But before we get started, we know it's kind of a crazy time. There's a health crisis, there's an economic crisis that's also part of it. And so we hope that everyone listening has been able to, remain in a good place, remain healthy, remain safe, and kind of wherever in the world you are, that you're set up well, that your families are doing well. I know it's a really hard time, and we just want to make sure that everyone out there is doing the best they can and staying safe and staying healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really wild time to be alive right now. It's a really crazy time in the world, and it's definitely been, a bit of a crazy time for us. So we know that as travelers, it's just a weird time since we can't travel. A lot of flights are grounded. A lot of countries have put travel restrictions and travel bans for foreigners. And so for a lot of us, we're grounded for however long this lasts. And we just hope that wherever you are enduring the coronavirus pandemic, we hope that you are safe and sound and healthy. And we hope that, our content over the next couple of weeks and potentially months can just help to support whatever, you're going through mentally, physically, emotionally.
Mm-hmm. And so the update on our end is that we are currently back in Canada as of
almost a week ago.
Yeah, last Wednesday we had a flight home. And we had originally had a plan to come back to Canada for a visit at the very end of April. But as things were progressing over the past few weeks, and it was looking like there was a probable chance that if we didn't go home soon, we wouldn't be able to go home entirely, we started to look more seriously at going home a little bit earlier. Do you want to talk about kind of just that conversation we were having about going home and why we thought that was the best move for us?
Yeah, I actually want to back up a little bit more even just from that conversation because, this has been happening in the world for a number of months now. And I think for a lot of us, especially if you're based in the West, in Canada or the US, you maybe didn't start paying attention to coronavirus until the WHO declared it a global pandemic. But for us, we have friends all over the world, and we have some friends who are still in Asia, and we're in Asia in January, and that's the first time that we heard about it. It was actually Annette and Daniel, who have been on the podcast, who you guys know from the show, who we were doing, some other work together. And Annette wrote to me and said, we're just trying to get out of China with everything happening with the coronavirus. And this was at, I think, the beginning of January. And I turned to Ryan and said, hey, what's the deal with this coronavirus? And then he told me, he updated me a little bit based on what he knew. And then I immediately messaged one of my really good friends who is a teacher in Macau. For those of you who don't know, Macau is an SAR and it's on the border of China. It shares a land border with China. And she was like, yeah, things are really crazy here. Everything's shut down. We're actually coming back to Canada. And they came back to Canada in the third week of January. And so we've been kind of watching this virus for a couple of months at this point. We were a little bit nervous about traveling for Carnival just because we weren't sure if at any point it was going to reach South America or Central America. We were just aware of it and aware that there was the possibility of, in a big space where there's lots of travelers, like anyone could be carrying this virus. But we really didn't at that point consider that we might have to go back to Canada, or we might make the choice to go back to Canada before we were planned to go. It really didn't happen until, I guess, the Friday the 13th, it would have been, ominous day. That was the first time we had a conversation about going home.
Yeah, and it was something we were kind of thinking about because kind of you could see the the way that things were going in most countries, but it was the way that it went in China and then Iran and then Italy, was looking like it was the way it was going to go most places, that there's going to be cases pop up, that they were going to grow really quickly, that things like travel were going to become a problem, that quarantines and lockdowns were coming to a lot of different countries. And so we started to think about, like, does it make sense to be in Panama? Does it make sense to try to get out now? And then kind of really during that last week, as a number of countries started implementing travel bans, it kind of became quite clear that it was like, well, it's either we leave now or we might not leave for a couple months, and kind of one or the other.
Yeah, for sure. And it was kind of crazy the way it happened in Panama. I think like a lot of countries, it happened really fast. So our last, I guess, travel that we did was actually not that long ago. We went to Valle de Antón, which is a beautiful little city just 2 hours from Panama City. It's actually located in an inactive crater. And we went for the weekend, and we were there until March 8th, which was a Sunday. And we came home, and it was that night that we had the first confirmed case of coronavirus in Panama City, or in Panama in general, but it was in Panama City. And then it just really spiraled from there. Like the following day, there was 8 confirmed cases, 1 person dead. Of course, somebody dying from the virus without us having any inkling that they were sick from it was really scary, I think, to a lot of people there, and definitely like had the virus was on the people's radar at that point. I mean, we saw massive lines for, the Costco there, the supermarkets, and we weren't in the lines, but we saw them through like photos and stuff through social media. And there was just a lot of stuff that happened really fast in Panama. So we basically went from like not being a country listed, having coronavirus, to all of a sudden we have 8 cases, 1 person's dead. There's updates and press conferences happening every single night. There's rules being implemented almost right away. And so we went from being like, things seem pretty fine here, to we think we need to leave in 5 days. Like it was 6 days between the time that we were in Valle de Antón feeling good, maybe thinking about what was going to happen with our flights at the end of April, to booking a flight in 6 days. It was insane how fast it happened.
Yeah. And what we were thinking about at that time was thinking about ourselves, of course, and kind of safety and health there. Panama has a relatively good medical system, but kind of like all countries in the world at this point in time, it seems like the spread and the severity of the COVID-19 disease/virus makes it so that most places you are, depending on when you might get it, you might not have access to medical care. And so that was a thought for us, but we had like a pretty good setup, nice apartment. We felt like, hey, we could just like hang out here for a couple of months and just like not really leave our apartment.
I mean, we could in theory have just like not left at all. There's great food delivery services. There's great grocery delivery services in Panama. Like we could have in theory just been like, okay, we're not leaving the apartment for the foreseeable future. And then also, I mean, we are in walking distance of a grocery store. So even within that, we could have just gone to the grocery store every couple of days and one of us could have just gone. So we were definitely like safe in Panama, and we felt safe. We definitely had a lot of conversations around like, what's the better option, being in Canada or being here? And, it wasn't like a black and white choice for us. It was, Panama seemed like a good option. I mean, the weather's good there. Our apartment's great. We feel really comfortable. We really love the country. So it was actually kind of a challenging decision to make.
Yeah. And so eventually we kind of just started thinking about and looking at how it seemed like travel restrictions and lockdowns were coming, and it seemed like they were coming kind of faster. And we were kind of thinking of the fact that like, it's going to seem too early to leave until you can't leave at all. And then it's going to seem like it's way too late. And so we decided that, okay, we wanted to book a flight. And so that was the past weekend. So 2 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah, Saturday, March 14th.
And we were thinking about a date. And we decided eventually we were thinking about a Friday, then we're like, no, let's move it up to a Thursday. And then eventually after one more day of seeing how quickly things are moving, we moved it up to a Wednesday. And then in between the time we decided to leave, Panama had put, stopped allowing foreigners into Panama. And then they announced that they were going to be shutting down the airport entirely 5 days after our flight out. And so already a number of flights started getting canceled. Colombia announced that they were shutting their borders. Most of the Central American countries between Panama and Mexico announced that they were entirely shutting their borders. The US had put into place its travel restrictions. Canada announced that it wouldn't be allowing non-Canadian residents or citizens into Canada, just kind of all this series of dominoes really quickly. And we started getting quite worried that we weren't going to be able to get home, and thinking about kind of family members. And at a time like this where you don't know what will happen, and just thinking of, hey, it would be really, really shitty to be in a situation where someone in one of our families was sick and we were stuck in our apartment, which might be fine for us from like a safety perspective. We'd probably be fine riding it out there, but just being that far away. And also the secondary thing of in Panama specifically, a lot of the government, I don't know if you'd call it rhetoric or stuff they were putting out there, publicizing, was like, hey, we're prioritizing the healthcare of Panamanians over non-Panamanians, which when you're thinking, hey, I'm probably fine, but might get sick, and we know probably don't have access anyways if the system's overwhelmed, doesn't make you feel super secure. So it was a tipping point as well of thinking, hey, I think it makes sense to just like quickly go home. Hopefully things will pass quickly and we can get back. But to be home over the next couple weeks or however long this takes to pass.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was like, I don't know, probably the most stressful couple of days. I would say probably stressful week or 10 days in total. It just felt like when I think about that time period, it just feels like a year of my life. And I know that is a blessing to say. Like, it takes a lot of privilege and to have lived a really great life to be able to say that, the hardest week of your life is making the choice about going to your home country that's safe and sound, where you have parents that'll take you in and have space for you and can take care of you and stuff like that. And we are, so lucky and so grateful and that sort of thing. But, for us, it was a little bit challenging. And for me personally, I thought a lot about how we don't run away from hard situations when we're traveling. One of the things that I promised myself when we first started traveling in 2011 is like, I won't go home if this gets hard. I'm not going to go home because of language barriers or because of food poisoning or because it just makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm going to push through it because that's where I'm going to grow. And so there was a lot of that sort of thoughts going through my head, at least when we were trying to make this decision. Like, are we just running home? Are we overreacting? Is it not as serious as the media is making it? Is it a silly decision to book a flight and go home? Are we going to regret this later? There's just like all these different things that can kind of mess with your mind. And I think having part of your identity like wrapped around being a traveler, it's like, oh, I'm a traveler. Like, I can face anything that the world throws at me. But then really, like, when we thought about, hey, if this thing is still happening in 6 months and things have gotten really bad and somebody in our family gets sick, one of our parents, one of our grandparents, and we're not there to see them or support or whatever needs to happen, how are we going to feel then? And I think for both of us, we were just like, that's not an option. Like, we want to be close to family and friends in case something happens, and that way we can support. And I think that was ultimately like where our decision came down to, is that at a time of like global emergency, we need to be close to the people that we love and that we care about so that we can support one another. And also like being in a country where you're just a little bit more comfortable. Like, of course, we feel comfortable in Panama and we feel really comfortable in our apartment there, and we really love being there and we're really eager to get back. But at the same time, there's just something that's like, at least for us, that feels a little bit more comforting about being in a country where the government feels a bit more predictable just because you know it and you understand the culture a bit more, and it's your home country. There's just something about that another country can't give you, at least for us. And I know that, I'm not speaking for anyone else. That's just kind of what we have been feeling.
Yeah. And the other thing that kind of made it complicated thinking through was, as this virus continued to spread and grow, we had over the past month in Panama, really kind of stopped doing a lot of stuff. Like we stopped going to like bars to get drinks with friends, really like kind of limiting our social contact, kind of just social distancing in general. And then knowing of like, okay, to go back home, we have to go to the airport in Panama, which is a big hub for people traveling to Latin America from all over the world. And then we're flying into an American airport, and then we're flying into a Canadian airport. And you've seen the photos on social media, like long lines at immigration and all these places of being like, this is like the way you get a virus that's currently spreading around the world, is go spend a day in planes and airports, which kind of was a bit stressful as well. Like, honestly, if we were looking at minimizing our risk of getting this, probably staying where we are would be the best bet. But we thought it made sense. So yeah, we kind of packed up our clothes and cleaned up our stuff and got ready and went to the airport in Panama City. And before we talk more about that, we're just going to take a quick break.
Yeah. And so the actual travel home, I think we were kind of both prepped for the worst. We really had no idea what things were going to be like because, of course, you only know what you see in the media if you actually haven't done it. Arriving to the airport in Panama City, we were flying with United, and United has been great throughout all of this. We were able to easily do flight changes from our flights in April and then change from Thursday to Friday. And they made it very simple for us, which we were super grateful for. And we arrived, I think, 2.5 hours early to the airport. Massive, massive line. So this is like exactly what Ryan just said. It's like, if you're going to get COVID-19, it's like going to be like in these lines where you're packed like sardines and everyone's high stress and everyone's breathing on you and you have no idea where they've come from and all this stuff. And, we waited in the line to check our bags for, I think, an hour because United actually doesn't stop doing like the online check-in because they have to ask where you've traveled to, if you've been to any of the countries that you're currently not allowed to travel from, which at that point when we traveled about a week ago, it was China, Iran, Italy, and I think most countries in Europe. And so we had to say no and, get like a security tag. And then we got our bags checked. We went through security and immigration, which was pretty chill. And then because we were traveling through the US, we had to go through our second round of security. So honestly, by the time we got to our gate, our plane was boarding. So I think we waited like maybe 5 minutes before we boarded the plane. And it wasn't like a stressful situation, but it was definitely like quite a bit of waiting, security procedures, checking, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. And then flew to Houston, pretty smooth and normal experience there. And then you fly back to Calgary in Canada. And before we had left back, Canada had put in a new rule requiring anyone traveling from abroad to quarantine for 14 days. And they'd put in restrictions on the people that could come into Canada and also prohibited certain airports from receiving international visitors. So arriving back in Canada was kind of a bit relieving of like, hey, we made it. But then having again to wait in a long line with different numbers of planes full of people from all over the world, packed like sardines again, you start wondering, but made it through, thankfully. And now that it's been a week, we both seem to be free and clear. And we've just been self-isolating in a kind of separate area of Amanda's parents' place, which has been, as far as things go, like relatively nice. And honestly, since we're both working from home, we're kind of used to just hanging out in small spaces by ourselves. It hasn't really been anything too strange for us.
Yeah. And one thing I actually just wanted to touch on that you said is that the US was pretty normal. I actually didn't feel like going through the US was totally normal. We arrived into US immigration and there was like not a soul in sight. Like I took a photo of the immigration room. It's massive because the Houston airport is like a massive hub for international flights. And there was nobody. We walked through immigration in probably 30 seconds, which I think for most people, is like that's kind of unheard of in the US. And also, too, like the US has put a lot of travel restrictions on. So that's probably why the airport was pretty relaxed in the international terminal. But also getting through was really chill. I mean, the guy goes to do, like the immigration guy goes to do is like, what are you doing in the United States? And we're like, we're just trying to get home. And he's like, yep, cool. Like, go on through, like, let's get you home to Canada. And it was interesting because in Panama, I felt like almost everyone was wearing masks and lots of people were wearing gloves. And then we got through into the US in the domestic terminal, and there wasn't a lot of people, and not a lot of people were wearing masks. So at that point, they were a little bit uncomfortable for us, and we felt like we had a lot of space. So we decided to take them off and just, kind of social distance within the airport. But it's kind of weird because as travelers, what a layover is like. Like you go, you get some food, you find a place to hang out. And in a lot of ways, it just felt totally normal. Like we got some food, and then we went and parked ourselves for a couple of hours because I think we had like 4.5 hours in Houston. But then it's like you kind of look around and it's totally dead, and you just remind yourself that like, oh, we're in the midst of this like global pandemic, and it's just such a strange experience. I mean, it's the same thing. Like every morning I wake up and it's like, oh, life is normal. And then you remember that there's like this global crisis happening, and it's just kind of a strange experience. But yeah, it was weird going through the US, but gratefully everything was totally fine. We got a minor health check to get onto the plane to go to Canada. And then like Ryan said, we arrived. It was super busy in the Calgary airport because Calgary is one of 4 airports accepting international flights. And we happened to arrive at the same time as I think 2 or 3 other flights. So we waited a little bit to get through. And then, yeah, now we're in my parents' house. They live outside of Calgary, and we have this cool little guest suite upstairs, and it's pretty nice. And honestly, like life feels pretty normal here, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's kind of weird actually to remember. I think too, being out kind of in a suburban area, you can still see people walking around. We're still doing our work. And so you kind of forget sometimes that it's like, okay, 1, we're like not supposed to leave the house. 2, that if you did, like the downtown core is dead. Like there's nobody there. All the businesses are closed. Yeah, you kind of forget about it. And it's just, I think for us, especially kind of weird because you just kind of have to put all your plans on hold. So right now we've got, our apartment in Panama City, but technically we're not allowed to enter Panama. And we're going to do our 14-day self-isolation here, but you don't know, like, are we going to be in some type of full lockdown after that? Are we going to be able to go anywhere after that?
It's kind of crazy. Like we canceled all of our Airbnbs for, the foreseeable future. All of our like upcoming flights have been canceled at this point. We basically have like nothing planned. It was really weird. I went onto Airbnb the other day, and it's like, we always have something in our upcoming trips. And I went, and it's just like this empty screen. And it feels weird, like when we talk about, our plans in the future, and it's like, we just don't really know. We don't know where we're going to be or what we're going to be doing or what things are going to be like. We have no idea kind of what the foreseeable future holds.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day about how it's like, we have an apartment in a country that we're not allowed into. We have a car, but it's
in a different province.
Which in 10 days we might not be allowed into. We have like plans, but they're in places where we might not be allowed into. It's weird.
It's very strange, but then at the same time, day-to-day life is actually not that different. I think the biggest thing that's been a little bit weird, and we experienced it this weekend, is that because we're on this mandatory 14-day self-isolation that Canada has put in for all travelers returning back to Canada, we can't even do our own grocery shopping. So my brother is a police officer, and so he's been grocery shopping for my family, and it's weird to give my brother our grocery shop order. And then the other day we're like, oh, we just really want like a coffee that's not made at home. That's one of the things, if you guys have listened to us for a while, Ryan and I love going to cafes, and most cafes are closed, but lots are still trying to do drive-through. But going through a drive-through when you're in self-isolation, you could potentially like have a virus asymptomatically is kind of a bit of a no-no. So it's just been a very humbling experience in some ways, and then also just a very sort of weirdly normal experience in other ways since we do work online. So it's been weird, I would say.
Yeah, and then one thing I wanted to mention was also just knowing a bunch of nomads. It's been interesting to see how, you mentioned before knowing some friends who are kind of currently in Asia, and then we have some friends who are hunkering down in Colombia, and know some people in Mexico still, and people just kind of like hunkering down wherever they're at, which is just kind of, it's been interesting to see, like, some people go home, some people not go home, and you kind of wonder, like, what are things going to be like in a couple months here? Like, is it going to be back to normal? What's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been in communication a lot with our friends all over the world. And, we really do have friends all over the world, and some have chosen to return home. We have lots of friends, particularly Canadian friends, who have made the choice to come home, I think probably because of the public healthcare thing. We have lots of nomad friends who don't have a residence in the United States and don't have active healthcare. And for them, they've decided to just stay where they are and just kind of hunker down there and do their social distancing or maybe their lockdown or isolation. I mean, we have friends that are locked down in Italy right now. So it's just been really interesting in a time where, we already have our communication is mostly all online with our people, to just be checking in with everyone and seeing what it's like everywhere, because it's like same, but different. It's really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so kind of, I guess, worth talking a bit about the future, but we really don't know what kind of we're going to be doing, which I'm sure is like a lot of people out there, like where kind of all your travel plans are put on hold. And if you spend most of your year traveling, you definitely have a lot put on hold. So our plan right for now is to kind of base ourselves here for a while, to continue we'll definitely do our isolation period and then continue social distancing, but hopefully be able to go drive out to my parents' place and continue kind of hanging out there and social distancing and doing our work. But really have just kind of put everything on hold and don't really know if things are going to continue. It kind of appears like things are going to continue to get worse before they get better. But I just kind of have to keep waiting and seeing what's going to happen.
Yeah. And in terms of, our work, nothing's really shifting. We're continuing to put the podcast out. Despite the fact that all travel's on hold, we still have lots of really great episodes for you guys. And, we don't want to live in a, fictional world where we pretend like coronavirus isn't happening and that we're not in a global crisis. But we also don't want to dedicate all of our airtime and all of your ear space and ear time to talking about the virus. We wanted to address it and update you guys with where we were at, maybe hear from you guys with where you're at and how you're doing. We would love to open that up to you to reach back out to us. But we're also going to try and just keep things going and keep sharing great content and travel ideas and ways to make money online and all that good stuff with you guys, because like everything, this too shall pass. And, at the end of this, the countries around the world that have been hit really hard are going to be so open and welcome to tourists. And as travelers, we're going to have so many opportunities to make great plans and to go see, amazing places once again. So it definitely sucks to be grounded and to feel like we can't make any plans, but we also know that this is what's best for everyone right now, to just keep everyone as safe and healthy as possible. And we're excited for a time where international flights fly all over the world once again.
Yeah, definitely. It has been, I think, just an interesting, obviously it's really sad for a lot of people, but living through a period like this, which is kind of unique and rare, and I think it makes us appreciate the kind of blessings that we have to be able to travel in a world where it's so easy to go to so many places and it's so available. Like to be in a position like we were 10 days ago where we were like, I don't know if we're just going to, because now we can't enter so many countries where so many countries are like threatening to ban people. Like, unfortunately, like there's a lot of people who come from countries where that's a normal. Like if you're from Venezuela right now and you're in a position where you can't go to so many different countries because of the visa rules, or you grew up somewhere. Also in the world where it's so hard to travel based off the country you're from. Like we have so many blessings as Canadians, and I think an experience like this can really help clarify that and show you that, and helps you appreciate it. And definitely as well to like live and appreciate all the good things that are going on in life and the memories that you can make, because you don't know when they're gonna run out.
Yeah, that's very well said. And so we're going to continue putting out weekly episodes talking about all things travel, and just keep hoping and praying that this passes quickly and affects as little amount of people as possible. And if you are out there somewhere in the world and you're feeling alone or stuck or anything like that, send us an email, info@theworldwanders.com. Definitely here to support and, offer up our community for that support. And also, if you are a traveler that's feeling frustrated by canceled travel plans, or, feeling like this virus kind of stole part of 2020 from you, I think, we totally get that. Like, we feel that as well. But like Ryan said, just daily expressing gratitude has been really helpful for us, and just remembering that like we're staying home, maybe not necessarily for ourselves, but for the other people who are more at risk. And that's really important right now. As travelers, it's really important that we lead by example and we hunker down and we stay home, because the more that we do now to prevent the spread of this virus, the sooner we're going to be able to enjoy our adventures again. So if you are still trying to travel, we would just really encourage you to either go back home or choose a spot to hunker down, and just know that, this is going to pass, and we'll be able to explore again soon. And you can definitely count on us to be back out in the world exploring as soon as we can. We are, very, very excited to get back to Central America as soon as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. So everyone out there listening, I hope that you and your families are staying safe. And if you want to connect and maybe share how things are kind of changing and what you're up to, how you're keeping your enjoyment level and excitement for exploring up during this quarantine period, definitely go to Facebook and check out the group, The World Wanderers Community for Travelers. Let us know kind of how you're passing the time in your social distancing. And if you're anyone out there who's looking to find a way to make some more money online, if you're in a position where that's something that you are looking to do, on our Patreon, so patreon.com/theworldwanderers, we've been doing some interviews with other digital nomads. And so, of course, all that stuff is remote online work. It costs $5 a month, and you get access to all those podcasts. We've had episodes on a number of different things, including teaching English, which is a very good opportunity to make a bit of money online, and a couple other things. And we'll have new episodes coming as well, all on that type of stuff. And so if that's actually something that you're looking to do, again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always send us an email, info@theworldwanders.com, if you have any specific questions. And we're definitely here to help if anyone needs anything.
All right, so that's all for now. We will be here in my parents' upstairs recording live for the next little while as we quarantine ourselves here. We might change our name to the In-House Wanderers, not too sure. But we hope that everyone's doing well, sending you lots of good vibes and happiness and health and smiles and laughter. And we will see you next week.
Until next time. To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers 1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.